All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Swampscott School Committee meeting. Today it is 7:02. Welcome everyone who's either in attendance or online. And to start the meeting, if you are able, please rise and salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Just really quick before we get to committee announcements. Couple changes from the last time. In case you don't know, I'm Glenn Pastor. I am was appointed the new chair. I am excited about it. To my left, or your right, is John Gantis, who's the new vice chair. Hi, John.
Glenn,
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so as we go through the first couple meetings, I'm going to apologize in advance in case we have a technology problem or I talk too long and the superintendent has to whack me in the knee to keep myself in order. Happy to be doing this. I'm excited. There's been a lot of great people, Amy, yourself, and many others who have sat in this chair, so I'm honored to do that. So with that, committee announcements. Amy, announce away.
I don't have a whole lot. I did, as my last duty, speak to the new teacher orientation, which was really exciting. It was exciting to see all of those new and what felt like very young faces. But it was exciting. It was really good energy, and I stood in the back and just overheard them talking a little bit before it was my turn to get up and go, and it sounded like a lot of really good positive conversations. So congratulations to you, Dr. Bacon, for what was probably a very intense couple of days, but exciting to see some new, our new faces, because we certainly lost a couple of good old timers, one of whom, Dr. Ratley, I got to stand with for a few hours on election day, who was out there supporting Tristan Smith, and it was just really exciting to see Dr. Ratley back, and that was about it.
Great, thank you. Suzanne.
I want to say that this back to school year felt so much closer to normal. It was so wonderful to watch the senior parade and see the kids in the morning just running across the field and greeting their friends without staying 6 feet apart or having masks on. It just finally felt like you could just like let out a little air. And I don't have any official announcements, but I just want to express publicly my appreciation to the superintendent, to Mr. Casper, and to Officer Wilson, our traffic consultant, Rebecca Brown, and all the principals and the PTO for making what could have been a nightmare just fantastic. That drop off and pick up and the practice and the planning and all the meetings that went into it, and all the collaboration. Just, I've never seen that in this town. And I know people, I've heard a lot through the school building committee, neighbors and abutters of the Stanley property sort of really concerned about traffic. Just that, before they get excited about the school, they're worried about traffic. And I've been saying all along, it's going to work out. We're going to figure it out. We have good police, we have good parents, we have good neighbors, we have good educators, and everyone's going to work together. And I've been saying that like this. and after I saw it, and I just like, it's crazy the amount of collaborative effort that went into making that work. And I know there's still bumps and hiccups, and I see that times are getting faster every day for pickup, but the collaborative effort is awesome. And now I feel like, I am definitely telling people the truth. Like I 100% believe what I've been like praying was going to happen, and it will happen. So I just wanted to publicly thank you and everyone else for just hosting those meetings and listening to people and changing and being really fluid with that whole practice. So that was awesome. It was fun to watch. It was like exciting to see like people following directions.
It was
Mr. Chair, may I comment on that?
Absolutely.
I want to shout out to Max because he's still there every morning and every afternoon with Miss Sanborn. Yes, a big round of applause for that. And if I'm not mistaken, my times are 2:24, 2:19, and today it was 2:15. The last car pulled away.
Wow.
So we are really doing
Really
well,
good.
considering it gets out. A lot of work. As you said, it takes a village. The PTOs working together have really, they brought up and poked holes in our plans. Every day we're improving. Rebecca Brown, it's not a quick commute for her to be here, being out there, supporting us, tweaking it as we go along, the parents adhering to what we're doing. It's this huge weight off my shoulders that I was just so worried. I couldn't sleep. Is it going to happen? And Martha riding the bus, and there's just been a lot of moving parts. But I know, Suzanne, you did reach out with a formal letter to Chief Casada, and it was very, very well received.
Okay.
So they were thrilled because, as many have said, Suzanne's a tough cookie. And when she gives you a compliment, it means a lot. You're framing it. So that's what I heard today. So that one meant a lot.
That's
awesome.
Yeah, sorry about that, I know.
Great, well, thank you, Suzanne. John?
Two very quick things. One, since we've kind of passed the baton with the chair and the vice chair, I just want to publicly thank Amy for, when I came on, and actually everybody, but Amy in particular, when I first came on, you were very good with your time, talked through various procedural things, substantive things. So again, I just want to thank you and the other committee members for making that during COVID, we actually didn't meet face-to-face for quite a while.
Quite a long
So,
time.
so for making that transition as good as we could have it under the circumstances, so
Makes us kind.
thank you. And the other thing is tomorrow night is the first football game of the season,
Friday
7
Night Lights.
p.m.
Friday Night Lights.
So just wanted to get that out there, playing Auburn, I think. And yeah, very excited for that.
Excellent, thanks, John. I don't really have anything to add other than, again, thank you, excuse me. Thank you to both Suzanne and Amy to, helping me, especially you, Amy, kind of get myself together, being the chair. I really do appreciate that a lot.
Great.
All right?
You want the food?
Oh, I'm sorry, I wrote it down too. Thea,
Hi.
it's all you, sorry.
I don't have any announcements, just kind of shout out to Officer Wilson for making this senior sunrise possible. I know that's probably so specific, but
No, it's good.
thank you. It was greatly appreciated, your efforts in helping us prepare for that, even 2 weeks in advance. It was really awesome. And yeah, we've got opening night tomorrow for a lot of our sports, so thank you, Miss Wolf. We're very excited. So yeah.
It seemed quieter this year, just from, just being at home, I didn't hear as much. Was it as,
We had a scrimmage last Friday.
no, I mean, the senior morning.
Oh, we tried to keep it as safe as possible. So we tried to stick to the route that we were given by Officer Wilson. That message was kind of mixed towards the end, unfortunately. But yeah, we were relatively quiet because we wanted to be a little bit more keep in regards to the new school and all that kind of stuff was a big thing for us this year. So we tried to keep it a little bit more low-key.
Great, great. How's the first couple days gone for you?
It's been weird. So weird. It's been fine. It's good to get back into it and not have to, worry about the mask, worry about the protocol, all this stuff. It's nice to just, be in school and be there because, it's school, not, because I have all these other things to worry about with COVID and stuff, if that makes sense.
Awesome, makes perfect sense. Thank you. Next on the agenda, superintendent report.
Thank you. So the first item under my report, everything that's listed under superintendent is part of my report, but the first thing, before I continue.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry,
That's good.
the chair's not done.
I spoke to Pam last week, and I do want to formally recognize both Suzanne for your years of service. Both as chair.
I feel like I should walk out now.
Don't get any ideas.
Right, but just for all your years serving and your continued years of service, and especially on the school building committee, which is just the piece de resistance, and I'm just happy, and congratulations for everything you've done. And Amy, for you, 2 very long years sitting as chair, and
How many years with chair?
a long time.
I know.
Right. You're welcome, and again, on behalf of all of us, thank you guys so much for what you put into the last couple of years, especially with the pandemic, and, you know, changing things on the fly, and really, you know, there was no book on how to do this, and you guys just have been great. So, you know, thank you for me, for superintendent, and for everyone on the board. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Takes a team.
If I can just say, it really is about a team, and Glenn and I met this morning, and it's one of the things that I talked about is that I think I'm really proud of this board and the fact that it is not 5 egos, but a true collaborative board that really works together. And in any well-functioning board is a board that knows their lane and knows what not to be involved in, so that the professionals can be doing what they need to do. And I'm really proud of this, of all 5 of us, and I know that you'll do a great job. So
Thank you.
I'm happy to have done it.
Great. Well, thank you very much
Thank you.
again.
This is
Thank you,
really
guys.
sweet.
Really appreciate it. Thank you for the reminder. And it's all you.
Okay, so the first item on my agenda is some sad news that the board is aware of already, but our crackerjack Director of Finance, Martha Seibert, will be leaving us on December 1st. I have said to Martha personally, she has taught me more in the area of finance than any other business manager, business administrator, director of finance that's been in this district before. She has come into the district and really straightened out our budget in a way that is so easy to understand. Her moving us to cost centers is so transparent, and just anybody can understand the way that we budget. She has been tireless in her efforts to straighten out the budget, to keep things moving. In the last almost year, she's done several jobs, including human resources and payroll, and still doing payroll herself, which we have a posting for that. But I just want to publicly say thank you for your years of service to Swampscott, and we wish you the best of luck. And I'm sorry you don't live closer. Please say a few words.
So I really do want to thank Superintendent Angelakis, School Committee Member Karen Marshall, who's not here tonight, Assistant Superintendent Martha Raymond, and the rest of the committee that brought me here to Swampscott, because this truly has been one of the most rewarding experiences, both personally and professionally. I've learned so much from my colleagues, and I'm better for having worked with each one of you. The decision to leave was not made lightly. As I said to Superintendent, the one thing about my job that I don't like, you can't change. I have, what many of the committee knows, I spend probably 10 to 15 hours a week commuting. And it just has really taken a toll over me over the last year. It was fine during the pandemic, but now that things are opening up, you know, this morning alone it took me 1 hour and 30 minutes to get here. So it's taken a toll on me. And when the opportunity presented itself to go to Andover, which is 3.4 miles from my home, my family looked at me like I was insane for even hesitating, and I hesitated for a really long time and reflected on it because I truly love it here, and it really was hard to leave. But I know that being the number 2 in a larger district, without school committee meetings anymore, without school building committee meetings, and knowing that I can do some of the things for Andover that I've done here, really was a challenge that was appealing to me. So I'm so proud of the work that we've done here. I know the superintendent talked about some of it, but you know, successful contract negotiations, fair and equitable with our unions, surviving a global pandemic and operating a food service program in the middle of it, And as committee member Suzanne Wright said, it takes a team, and I wouldn't have been successful without my team. So Claire Gorman, Maureen Kellett, Natalie Pena, Kate Curtis, and Chris James have been incredibly supportive of me and this district over the last 4 years. So you made it a lot of fun to come to work. And so I'm here for 3 months, and I will not leave you guys high and dry. We'll have most of the budget baked before I go. But I look forward to wrapping it up and assisting in the transition. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
One quick thing to add.
Yeah.
We're gonna miss you on the school building committee as well, and that's another job that I know is, in addition to your full-time job, is your other full-time job with this, and you've been the queen of checks and balances and making sure people are following the rules and, you know, I's are dotted and T's are crossed, and things are moving along as smoothly as they are
Thank you.
Largely in part because of the job you've done. And that's going to be a hard one too.
Eagle eyes. She always picks up on something, and I can trust that she's going to find something.
I know, but you've been the best student. Like, you really have. Like, you could present
There you go.
the budget.
There you
You
go.
could present the budget. It truly has been a pleasure.
Well,
It really has.
Same here. You've taught, as I sincerely think, and I sincerely feel that, and I've said it to you a million times privately, that you've taught me a lot. So, did you want to say?
I just want to say thank you and say that you're a class act, and the fact that you are giving us the final 90 days and seeing this through is testament to who you are and the job that you've done all along. So thank you.
Thank you. So next item on the agenda is the proprietary list for the new elementary school. There is a vote requested for this, and if Mr. Giantis can pull this up, I am going to have Max Casper, Director of Facilities, lead this conversation.
Thank you, Superintendent Angelakis. I'll briefly run through what this is all about. Throughout the design of the new elementary school, we've had an active list of potential items that we are going to request as proprietary in the design of the new elementary school. What this comes down to is, because of public bidding laws, you cannot always specify certain very specific items that need to be put into the building. There is discretion of the contractor in selecting items. So many times they will, have a basis of design and then alternate items or alternate systems that can be used by the contractor. But in some circumstances, the district and the town can request that very specific types of systems and items and products be used. If those items are used in other ways in the district, where if we were to kind of move away from those uses, it could be problematic for the district. So that, there needs to be a genuine justification for requiring a proprietary item, and in conjunction with that, there needs to be a vote of the school committee approving the proprietary list. So, like I said before, we have actively been looking at this list over the last year and adjusting it, adding to it, taking away from it. And the list that is before you tonight is what we have landed on for the proprietary items to be specified in the construction documents. So I can briefly run through them, and if there's any specific item that you want me to go into greater detail on, I will. But the items that we are specifying as proprietary are the door access system, which is consistent across all schools currently and a number of the town buildings that we want to be consistent at the new building. The camera system, so we have both specific types of cameras that we have started to use, and also, more importantly, a camera program that we look at the cameras on that we want to be consistent across all schools and is currently. The fire department key vault box, this is a small item. The fire alarm radio box, it's again an item related to the fire department that they've requested. Electric vehicle chargers, this is chargers that we want to be consistent with other chargers that we have in the town and here at the high school, so that they can be managed across a uniform platform. and the voice over IP phone system. We currently have a consistent phone system across all school buildings, which allow us to communicate freely across the buildings with just the extensions. So you would not want to be running two different phone systems, one at one building, one at another. So those are the building items, and then also for the FF&E, we're requesting that the visitor control system, the Raptor system that's used in the schools be proprietary, as well as the interactive smart boards that we have committed to using Promethean in a number of the buildings, and we'll be continuing to invest in that product line.
So you need a formal vote on this, correct?
That's correct.
I would just say that everything on this list has been discussed repeatedly in several meetings, and that, as Mr. Casper said, to continue with Brevo and to continue with the systems that are working are very important to our directors of the different departments, and just makes the most sense for us. So I would request a favorable vote on this proprietary list.
Great. Suzanne, do you have any comment or thoughts on any of this?
No, I think this is, you can't have too many of these things, right? The state, the bidding laws prevent you to have too many things, and these are really important things to people that have been vetted, and there's less important things that we're letting go, like, for example, the type of brick we're using. We're allowing the contractor to pick from A, B, or C, and those are decisions that, are fine to let go, and these are much more important, so.
Okay,
No.
great, thank you. Any other questions before we make a motion?
A couple,
Go.
if that's okay.
Please.
So, and again, this is, Max, I'm just trying to understand the process a little bit, so I
Sure.
appreciate your patience. So for, just as an example, like the camera, do we have a say on which system? I guess where I'm going is, is it going to be the Cadillac system, or is it going to be the one that we need, that's more of a functional nature, that sort of thing?
So more importantly, it's going to be the same as the one we currently operate. That's most of these items, that's what it comes down to. So, for example, we have cameras throughout the high school, throughout the middle school, and select cameras at the elementary schools, cameras at the police station, and the town hall. All of those cameras are viewed on a software called ExactVision. That's the literal name of it. So we are requesting that the bid documents make ExactVision proprietary and mandatory as the installed back-end system. Whereas if we didn't do that, the contractor could come in and pick a system for us, and then we'd be operating ExactVision across 6 buildings, and then a totally different system at the new building. That's the justification for that specific one.
And we've never gone for the Cadillac with what we have. We do the most responsible. So what already exists, I am confident saying, is not a Cadillac. It's what works for us, where it's worked best, but that's just it, is having compatible systems, the same systems across all buildings. It just makes
But it's
sense.
also important that we've had safety and security consultants as
Mhm.
part of the school
Right.
building team,
Mhm.
right, that have met with the facilities, the police and the fire, to sort of, and the principal and superintendent, to sort of flesh out what the needs are in elementary school versus what the needs are, high school or middle school for security and safety. So I feel really confident in, I have no idea what the exact system is for sure, but like the superintendent,
So it's-
there's nothing
It's
Taj
appropriate for
Mahal-
the purpose here.
nothing
Nothing
Taj
Taj
Mahal
Mahal.
about this building.
And just my other, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
My other question was just on the electrical vehicle chargers. And trust me, I'm all for reducing carbon emissions, that sort of thing, Max. I guess, so this is publicly, so anyone can bring their electric car and charge here for free?
So it is going to be a similar model to what we have here at the high school and what we have at the town hall as well, where the chargers are available to us in the town as we obtain more and more electric vehicles to use for fleet services, but then also available to anyone really, town member or otherwise, that wants to come and plug in, but they're not free. They do get charged at a rate that we set. Our goal with those has been to, not make an exorbitant profit, but, charge a reasonable rate that covers the cost of sort of operating the systems, and I think that's a pretty consistent approach. But, you know, our goal at this point is not to have them just free charging stations.
Okay, yeah.
As an aside, I was here Saturday or Sunday, all the days of learning together, and there were 2 vehicles charging the whole time I was here and at the high school, so it was nice to see.
And also, installing those on our property was good for us for energy credits.
Mhm.
So that was important for us to have chargers on the property, so that,
My mind kind of went to, you know, just kind of the cost for the town, so it sounds like we've factored that in here.
Yep,
Okay,
absolutely.
all right.
Can you explain it in the process, why are we so limited to what things we are demanding or requiring? Why is that?
It has to do with public procurement, really.
Oh, so like if my brother-in-law has a company, it's to make sure that I don't, you know, send money his way, or just kind of, okay.
Yeah, it's just procurement in general where, you know, we can't go out and hire any electrician we want to do a large
Right.
job. We have to put that out to bid. It's similar with products that
Okay.
you can, if you have a need, any product that fulfills that need generally can be used by a supplier at the scale that we're talking about with the new school project, unless you have a legitimate justification for why you want a very specific product.
Okay. And how does that factor in, this question might be for you, Suzanne, in terms of, like, desks and chairs, and that doesn't mean that they're choosing them necessarily, but that we're not requiring.
yeah,
It's different.
it's a tiny bit different,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, the whole FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, is another consultant, and we spent an entire day here with the teachers going through actual materials
Okay.
and desks and bookcases and things that were here, just like we've gone through the interior finishes in person, we've gone through the exterior finishes in person, so the furniture is totally separate with a consultant, and a lot of teachers were involved, a lot of
Okay.
elementary teachers, yeah.
I'm
It
just
was
curious
great.
about the process.
It was
more than
great.
anything.
It was really,
No, it's a different
Right,
different process when you're like, because we are purchasing those items. The items I'm talking about in this list are gonna be supplied by the contractor while they're building the building,
Right.
and that's why you need the extra layers of protection.
All right,
I mean, mostly it's so the contractor has some flexibility, right? Like if you can't get a certain thing because the supply chain is so backed up, or if they're, you know, robbing Peter to pay Paul a little bit
Yeah.
to balance what they need to do.
okay.
I think it's.
but these are the non-negotiables.
Yeah, these are non-negotiable.
work
And
for
the
our
truth of the
district.
matter is, if they don't provide our 3 choices, right, or they provide something we're absolutely against, we have a say. I mean, we
Yeah.
can
Right.
sort of argue some things, but
And I think the brick example is perfect. Like, we
Right.
can love a brick, but we can't make a justified argument that this brick is proprietary to us, because,
Yeah.
Right.
you know, we're not harmed by putting this brick
and
in.
believe me, we're looking at bricks that are like this color, slightly this color, and slightly this
Well,
color.
in
And if
this
we
light,
pick
it looks like
one,
this, and
we
in
want
this light, it
route.
looks like that.
It's just like,
Wow,
yeah,
okay.
it's like kind of, yeah.
Okay,
It's interesting, but.
Yeah, it's been a great learning exercise.
Sure.
All right. Okay. So could I have someone make a motion, please, for us to accept the proprietary list for the new elementary school?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All right. All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, it passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate the
Max.
information.
The next item on my agenda, if you would like to pull it up, Mr. Jantis, is the opening of schools report. Each year annually, I ask the principals and leaders of the buildings to report out on how the first few days went. And so this is a multi-page document that I'm certainly not going to read to you, but I will echo what Suzanne said and also what Afia said. This was a really great start. It felt more normal than it's felt in a really long time. It was nice to see smiles, no masks, kids, you know, with their friends. It just was a fantastic opening. We did, as we talked about a little bit earlier, we had, you know, the Blaney-Hadley opening right next to each other. That had us all up at night, and I think it went pretty seamlessly. I am choosing not to read this multi-page document to you, but I will post it on the website so that parents have access to it. But I think, the pandemic taught us a lot in terms of, Chromebook distribution. And I do know that, Mrs. O'Connor, you had a question about why the middle schoolers aren't taking their Chromebooks home anymore. And I did confirm it was because of the accidents that occurred and the cost to the accidents. So it's a better way to manage those Chromebooks. But a shout out to our tech team, who always does a fabulous job turning over the tech equipment, especially the one-to-ones to the kids. But it was a great start. Speaking of which, the next item, moving to the next item on my agenda, is about the convocation. I was trying to figure out if I was going to have Ms. Seibert speak, but I'll finish this. So at our convocation, I began the day with gratitude, and my gratitude was for everyone in that room, from custodians to nurses to administrative assistants to the facilities department to the ESPs, the tutors, just that they've stuck with us over these last couple of years, that they haven't chosen other occupations and left us, that, gratitude for sticking with us as we muddled our way through. And then there was also gratitude to anyone that was involved in the Stanley closing and the Blaney move. It was, and I asked everybody to stand to be recognized, the amount of work the facilities department put in, those custodians put in from Stanley, the teachers put in to be packed up by June 23rd was crazy. And then the teachers setting up Blaney, and that building you saw when you walked through looked like it had been a school forever.
Right, yeah.
So I just felt it was important to shout out to those people at the convocation. And then, very importantly, I did recognize Mrs. Karen and Mrs. Cameron for their retirement, their upcoming retirements. And then we moved to academics and what we stand for and what our PD is going to be about. And a lot of what we talked about last year was our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging plan. And DEI has become a buzz word across the state for a very long time. But we had a group of core people leading our work in the DEIB area. It's like the strategic planning group. And we decided, we've talked about this, one of the things we don't do well in this district is really sell what we're doing well. And so they came up with some new branding. Instead of calling it DEIB, we're calling it our core work. And that means community, opportunity, respect, and equity. And that's something that everyone can easily remember: community, opportunity, respect, and equity. And then we reviewed a little bit of what we had accomplished last year, because as we did the work that first year and coming out of a pandemic, we chose not to burden the entire district. I spoke several times last year about the SEED, professional development, the foundational work that the leadership team did along with some teachers. And so now our goal this year, moving forward, is to really spread that work in the next 2 to 3 years, having all of our district trained in this area. It wouldn't be 24 hours, it'd be 6 hours. But we do have, an action plan that we hope to accomplish with this core work this year. And I'm sure at an upcoming meeting, Dr. Bacon will present more of this. But so if you hear or see PD work around core work, it really is DEIB, but it's just been rebranded. And I think that's easy for what do we stand for? That's easy for everyone to remember. And then we talked about, one of my signature moves at convocation is a tear-jerking video, and we had a couple this year. But one of them came at the last minute when I was working the day before the convocation, figuring out what I was going to say, which inevitably happens. A few weeks ago, probably a month ago, I received an email from a graduate of Swampscott High School from the robotics team. He was the former president of that team, and I'm going to read a little bit of that. he said, "Your support for our activity over these years has proven invaluable, from supporting our trip to WPI in Detroit in 2019 to providing us the funding to go to district championships this year, should we have qualified. Our team is truly thankful for everything that you do for us. We truly could not have done it without you and without your help." So Leo Rudfeld, who was the team captain, not the president, excuse me, from 2019 to 2022, graduated. But what he wanted to share with me before it went public, it says, "Over the past year, our team has worked incredibly hard, surrounded by passionate members. To encompass this, we've produced a short documentary titled One Special Robot. One Special Robot is a short film showing the importance of robotics to all of our members. I would like to invite you on behalf of the team to watch the film before it premieres on August 30th, and he sent me the link. So I watched it by myself and got teary. And while I was in my office, it was a Sunday, and I looked him up in Aspen, and I waited till 11 a.m. on a Sunday and called his house to speak to him. And I said, I understand your premiere isn't till the 30th, but when we talk about our district and the why, you are my why, and I'd like to share this at the convocation. He was very excited, and he said, "Well, you know I'm not part of the team anymore, so I will get back to you later today, but I will send something out to the team to see if it's okay for you to share it at the convocation." I said, "You know, we do this work for the love of students, and I think all of your teachers would want to see this." So long story short, he wrote me that night and said, "You have the go-ahead, we're going to premiere it tomorrow," so they got ahead of me, but I did share it at the convocation, and I'd like to share it with the committee here tonight, if that's okay.
Excited.
Would you like me to do that?
Yes, please, if you could click on it. I hope the volume works. Joe, do we think we have the volume set up?
We're gonna try it. If it doesn't work from down there, I'm gonna run it back here.
Okay.
Should we get our tissues?
Could you enlarge that, John, with a little, on the right-hand side, the bottom square? Yeah. It doesn't seem like it's going, Joe.
Okay, pause it. And then
Take it
stop
back.
sharing, John, and I'll try it from back here.
Thank you.
What does the robotics team mean to me?
Hold on 1 second.
I don't think that I would be the same person now if I hadn't joined robotics.
This has easily been the best thing that high school has given to me.
It's sometimes the only reason why I want to show up to school.
It's a whole different sense of happiness.
We may have different sub-teams, but it doesn't matter. In the end, we have one community, one family, and we come together to build one special robot.
I just love that.
That's
Isn't
so
that-
awesome.
You know, if someone were to ask me what I'm most proud of in my superintendency and my tenure, it is that we are creating what I had always hoped to do, and that is programs for different niches of kids. And from the mouths of babes, robotics is sometimes the only reason I want to come to school.
Right.
We're doing that with advanced manufacturing. We'd love to expand the advanced manufacturing. We're looking into another strand of that kind of work for our district. And, you know, I would love at some point, it's my dream, and I said this at the convocation, to somehow get culinary in here. But this is an example of, we saw the passion in the advanced manufacturing when those students came before us, and now to see the passion here. And pre-pandemic, I think I've said this to the committee before, I did go to one of those competitions, and you think Friday Night Lights are pretty good, like this was intense, and I can't wait to attend in person again, their competitions. The passion, you see the girls and the boys, and wearing the mask, working so closely, and all that goes into it, and it's just a really exciting program. I'm proud of our kids, and I was honored that they shared it with me before it came out, and I was really privileged to share it at the convocation, so I just wanted to share that with the committee.
Thank you very much. That's incredible, actually.
It's a great group, you know, and we didn't get to go to the competition because of COVID, but it's like 40 schools go to these.
Mhm.
Oh, it's crazy.
It's incredible, so.
And to watch them in the pit doing their work,
Right.
and it's intense. And then the robot gets out there and they're in the competitions. I can't wait to attend again, but how special that felt for me. And I said to him, you are my why, and I think we need to show this. This is what we're in this business for, is to make a difference in the lives of children, and I think we're doing that. So I get emotional again.
That's great. That's why everybody
Well, I
does
can
what they
tell
do
you
here.
that the boy who, at the end, who made the film, Zach Hankins, that he came to school to make films. I think Mr. Dulett could talk about that, and it changed his whole life here. And he's now at college, and it's one of the things that he's studying. And it's to have all those different whys.
Yes.
Is really.
When we help a student find their why, that's what it's all about in my book. And we provide those opportunities. So I'm very, very proud of that, and I just thought I'd share it with you.
Well, thank you for sharing.
You're
It's
welcome.
Great.
Because this is about the opening of schools, I am going to toss it over to our Director of Finance, Martha Seibert, to talk a little bit about the transportation that's been going on. I do want to shout out, as I did previously, I don't know any other district that would have a Director of Finance riding the bus to and from school with the elementary kids and
middle school.
And the middle school, and particularly the first day when everything was messed up, and she's keeping those kids going, and they were a half hour to 45 minutes late, but they were all cheering, and so I'm going to toss it. It's been a yeoman's job to coordinate, and I'm going to toss it to Ms. Seibert.
Before you go there, do we have to talk about district student handbook?
I'll get to that after, but I
Okay.
figured I'd keep it under the
Perfect.
report.
Perfect.
So thank you, Superintendent Angelakis. I do want to share that, that we have been in receipt of a lot of thoughtful feedback and suggestions and kind words from all the parents, and we do truly appreciate it, and we have read all of them. I've sent out a couple of communications via Aspen to families to let them know that we do hear their concerns, that this is a process, and I do think that we will have a new route come Monday morning with an additional stop that I think families will appreciate. But, you know, we did encounter some challenges that first day. The bus didn't come, and, you know, one of the feedback that we received was, how did you not plan for this? Like, well, we planned for a lot of things, but the bus not arriving wasn't one of the things that we planned for. I was happy to be there that day. You know, I did ride the bus 2 days, and I was at that very first stop at Humphrey and Manton Road. And, you know, I directed kids to line up on Manton Road, not Humphrey. Humphrey, we know Humphrey is a busy street. We want you to line up on Manton Road. And so we're getting a lot of feedback that the kids are lining up on Humphrey Street. And I can't be there every morning to direct kids to line up on Manton Road. That's where they're supposed to be lining up. So, but we are making some changes and some tweaks, and we are aware. And I really genuinely mean this when I say, you know, if you have some concerns, please email BlaneyBus at swampscott.k12.ma.us. We are reading them, and you know,
Don't laugh, Suzanne, that was my clever name.
yeah,
They come to me.
it's been, you know, it is helpful to get that feedback. And the same way with a lot of the traffic patterns that we had, you know, community input. I will say that what the route that we're suggesting that we're working on with NRT came from one of the suggestions that came to us. So it is thoughtful feedback, it is heard, and I want to make sure families do hear that, we do hear them, so.
I just also want to reiterate or emphasize that, you know, NRT came up with this route along with the input from the traffic officer, the SRO, the town, because certain streets in our community are narrow. So a lot of thought, the parents might not get all the changes they want, but we have heard them and we'll make the changes as appropriate. I know one morning I was out at Hadley doing the drop-off, and Martha came by in a bus full of little kids, and they were all screaming, you know, oh! It's
I wish
quite,
you'd taken a picture.
I wish I did too, I wasn't
I've got some
expecting it.
video of
Yes.
that.
Oh, you've got to send, it's just,
Yeah.
it's precious. I think for a town that has never had busing for our smallest learners, it's exciting for them.
Yeah,
Right.
So, anyway, I want to thank you for all your work with that.
thank you.
How's it working time-wise with middle school?
Perfectly.
Mhm.
It really is, and that was honestly my biggest concern and fear was that, you know, is that 30-minute window that the superintendent and I so carefully carved out going to allow us to do two-tiered busing, which most districts do, and it has worked out
That's awesome.
seamlessly.
And the beauty of this is we're set up for the new elementary
I-
school.
Yeah.
Again, all of
Just gonna
this
say
is
that.
practice.
Yeah.
That we are getting the kinks out now, 2 years ahead of the game, and I'm really proud of that.
I mean, everything, just like, you know, working on the teacher contract this year for the earlier, switching the start time.
Right.
You know,
Mhm.
These are all things we're gonna have 2 years to sort of really tweak, and, yeah, I'm psyched.
It really is laying a very good foundation for where we're going with the
Yeah,
district, and I'm,
Absolutely.
yeah, so.
And would you like to report out on extended day?
I would, thank you. I did want to take an opportunity just to update the committee that, you know, we are in the second year of our extended day program with our collaboration with the YMCA, and that I am really happy to report that we are servicing about 158 kids across the district, almost 160 students. We are operating in all 3 elementary schools, after school only now, since we switched the start time to 7:50 in the morning, and we offer a breakfast program that starts at 7:30. We really felt like, you know, families that needed to could be dropping their children off for breakfast at 7:30, and so that we don't have a morning program at this time in the district. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't, you know, bring it back at a later date if we needed to. But it's just afternoons, and our site coordinators are working closely with our building principals, and so far, so good. We had our first day on Tuesday, so we welcomed back a lot of kids to our extended day program.
And I didn't have an opportunity to read this. Am I speaking correctly when I say we were able to wipe out our wait lists
I believe we did, yes.
So
We
there
had
was
a number
no
of wait
Wait
lists.
list
That's
on.
great.
of who to get in? We expanded areas within the schools. The principals worked really collaboratively with the Y to give additional space so that there were no students left on any wait list
Oh.
at any.
Good.
So
I want to say that that's my understanding. If we haven't cleared the wait list, it will be cleared by next week.
correct.
So they were working with ECE to expand their capacity at a couple of our schools, so I'm not certain if that came through
And what's
this
the
week or
number
next
this
week.
year versus last year?
Enrollment is up,
Oh, good.
yeah.
And so the early childhood education, that acronym, they come in and say, so for example, this was the most recent example I was involved in, they felt that the lime and lemon cafeterias at Hadley and the gym, there's a certain formula they used for space, so it could not take the 71 students, it could only take 59, and they needed an additional space for those additional students. And so Ms. Sanborn worked with their staff, and they're giving them the art room. So they have certain formulas they have to adhere to for square footage per student, and so that was all worked around.
So that's a state thing? No.
Mhm.
So they can't do that for after-school program, but they can do that for school, right? I mean, like, you know.
No, they can do,
like-
right,
I'm just saying,
right,
like, we've had our
no.
kids cramped in there.
when they're all eating in lime and lemon and there's
Yeah.
more body, yes, for the
But
use.
These numbers are great. I mean, this is real kudos to the entire district to be able to help parents, you know, have the smallest learners to get in school earlier if they need breakfast, I think this is great. I think it's a real kudos to everybody in this district.
Thank you. And, it was another unintended consequence of the pandemic where we couldn't after school and manage
Right.
it ourselves anymore. And so to partner with the YMCA and really have a strong partnership has been completely beneficial, I think, to both parties, so.
Well, another
That's
way
great.
that the Y has been a really good partner.
Yep.
Wow, that's
Thank you,
fantastic.
Martha.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And the final item on my, under my section is to review and adopt the district student handbook, which I'd love to get to you in August before the school year starts. It's a 68-page document. What happens every year is we ask the building leadership teams to look at the handbook and to come to our leadership retreat ready for corrections and adjustments and edits. For example, the biggest one that stands out in my mind is the high school used to have their mission and core values, and instead was inserted the vision of a graduate this year under that section. Another, for example, Martha Raymond worked on diligently with Craig Harris, and there used to be a separate preschool handbook. Now the preschool is in here, and also the bullying policy, bullying forms, everything is in here now. So we're trying to make it all-encompassing. And I will say that I read an article in the paper where another school district is going to this online student handbook, and they took it from the Swampscott Public Schools. So,
Oh.
Excellent.
yes, so I'm proud of the work that we're doing. I'm proud of the fact that we are now trying to make this, as user-friendly as possible, one place, one-stop shopping for everything that people need. So my entire team has reviewed it. I'm hoping you didn't spend time reading 68 pages, but it is, it's well done, and it's up to date.
Great.
So I don't think you need to vote, maybe just vote to adopt it. There is no vote requested, but it says review and adopt. It's been sent out, so
I
I
was
think
gonna
it's
say
already
people
been
have signed
adopted.
it.
So I don't know how you'd like to handle that.
Amy, it's one of those times I'm going to kind of defer what your thought is.
I'm trying to remember what we did last year. I think that this doesn't, even though that these are your school policies, that this is not our school committee policies.
These are our procedures, so it's not
Yeah.
policy.
Okay.
But I guess I would request a vote of support for it.
Suzanne, do you have any memory of this?
Yeah, I think this is exactly what we did, just a vote of support, because this
Sure.
wasn't something we had.
Okay. Then, could I have someone make a motion that we support the updated school district student handbook?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in affirm, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And it's unanimous, 4-0. There
Thank
go.
you.
You're welcome.
Did that district give us credit for it, or?
In the newspaper, yes.
Oh, good.
All
They
right.
were shouted out.
Yay, you.
Print that off. Put
I
that on
know,
your
really?
wall. That's
Frame
great.
it.
That's great.
And that concludes my report. The Director of Finance does have one more item she'd like to share with you tonight, and I know the memo isn't linked, but we will get it linked so that the agenda is accessible and the memo is accessible to the public. But if you'd like to take it away, Ms. Seibert?
Thank you. This is just a brief update on some evaluation and research that we've been doing on electronic bus grant opportunities. And so it made the news a while ago that the EPA had a $500 million funding for electric buses. There's other funding as well for electric buses. The first round really was, the application was due April 19th. We didn't really qualify for that first round. You had to have an existing fleet that you were going to turn in. It was almost like a trade-in where you were turning in an older bus that had to meet certain criteria in terms of age and weight. And obviously we don't own any buses, so we didn't qualify for that one. But the interesting thing with this opportunity is that the next round of funding is more likely going to be a grant application where you can apply to get a grant to buy electric buses, where you don't have to obviously own your fleet already. And so that's something that the district should consider and maybe want to explore. Some things to maybe be thinking about is, how many buses to purchase, where you're going to store the fleet, where you're going to locate the charging stations, and then most importantly, who you're going to hire to drive them. That's been one of the challenges that after the post-pandemic has been getting drivers, and Martha Raymond is shaking her head because we both hear on a daily basis what NRT and other providers are struggling with in terms of getting drivers. So the good news is that we haven't missed any opportunities. There are resources out there that the district can continue to tap into, and I do think there'll be some funding opportunities in the next fiscal year. So stay tuned for that.
And I'm happy you brought that forward, Ms. Seibert, because I think the committee's been receiving a lot of information about these electric buses. And so just to clarify, it was an education for me when Ms. Seibert said, you had to already own a fleet in order to tap into that first amount of money. So it was a great explanation. It's something to keep on our radar moving forward, and especially as we look ahead to the new elementary school, any opportunities, but there's a lot of pieces to this, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, I remember at one point you recommending not going the route of owning our own bus because we have to take care of the upkeep, you have to have backup, if something should happen, whether it's your bus driver or your bus, and so to have sort of one.
Yeah, in a district like right now, where we have such small number of mandated transportation requirements, it didn't make sense. But the biggest barrier to entry to taking it in-house is the cost of capital. And so if you can get funding to buy the fleet, then that changes the equation, and maybe it is worth evaluating in a thoughtful manner on bringing it in-house. I know a neighboring district, they've trained some of their maintenance and custodial staff to be bus drivers. So they drive the buses as well as other things. So there are creative ways to do it.
What's the minimum weight for a bus? Like, is it a full-size bus? Or, because I noticed a new electric bus in the Marblehead parking lot that looks like a slightly bigger than a 15-passenger van. It's just sort of curious, because I know, like, to transport the golf team, for example, like smaller teams,
Yeah.
right?
I was thinking
Or
the same
to
thing.
transport the robotics club, or something we can use, something we could easily have in-house.
Yeah,
That we have people that are qualified to drive.
Those certainly we could put into the capital plan, and I did put into the capital plan for next year. I'm putting in to replace our existing vans, and I think we should explore replacing them with electronic buses, electronic vans. This program and this funding is really geared towards the larger school buses, not the smaller van type of things. Because that did come up a couple times on one of the Zoom calls that I was on. Can we use it to buy vans? Can we? No, this is for this is for buses.
So like not the bus like at the senior center.
Yeah.
Yeah, this program wasn't designed for that, but that doesn't mean that the district shouldn't explore that as an opportunity to use capital to do.
Great. Any other questions?
Because I didn't talk enough about transportation tonight. I had to get an electric
You're all
bus
about
as
buses.
well.
You'll be driving that bus, too. All
Show
right.
off your knowledge.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on to the chair. I don't have any updates today, and I look forward to a discussion with the athletic director and superintendent. If I could turn it over to you.
Sure enough. At the last meeting, it came up, there were a lot of questions, and I expressed the fact that Ms. Wolf always has explanation and answers and educates me on different aspects of the athletic program. And so you've asked her to come before you tonight. You had sent a lot of questions prior to the 17th of August. And so if we could bring up that document that Ms. Wolf created, I'd like to go through them and then give the committee an opportunity to ask questions. One of the items, as I shared with Mr. Pastor and Ms. O'Connor, that is not on here, that was a question that came in later, and Ms. Wolf and I discussed it, is our co-op sports programs. It was really interesting when we were talking the other day about, first of all, how many we have, why we have them, and how they come about. So that, I believe, is the only question and answer that's not on here. And I don't typically like reading documents to the committee, but I think this is an important topic that we go through each and every question and answer, if that's okay with you, Ms. Wolf.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so just to take it in order, so the first question was about the athletic department having a mission statement. We don't have a written mission statement per se, but there is definitely a philosophy, which is on the last page of the document. It can also be found in the athletic handbook. It's all about, the bottom line is, I'm not going to read that whole thing, but it's all about educational athletics, life lessons being learned. So above and beyond significantly the X's and the O's of any kind of a game. So that's really what's encompassed in that. So I wanted to make sure people were aware of that. Talking about,
Do you think that actually, would it be more helpful if we just talk at the end, or do you want to?
it's totally up to you.
No, feel free, let's,
Yeah.
it's each question, let's just
Do
go.
you think that the student athletes, do you think it's consistent across each of the sports that they get that? Because I read that, and I thought it was really good. And having just sat through the parent meeting for athletes, I heard some of it when you spoke. I didn't hear all of it. And I also heard some of the issues being woven into what the coach said. So it just made me wonder if it's, how consistent it is. And
Do you want to recognize Sophia? I think
Yeah,
she has an
absolutely.
answer.
Just coming from someone who is a student athlete, I work with Miss Wolf all the time. She's been an advocate for me since I've been here as a freshman. It has always been her first and foremost thing that our education and the way that we, not only the education from our school, but the education that we learn from our sport is the first thing always. Like, no matter what, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And like, for me, I've played multiple different sports throughout the high school. I've never had a coach or someone question my educational needs ever. So maybe if that helps you in a way, kind of.
Well, so I guess my question is more, so I'm gonna make an assumption here by
That's
virtue
okay.
of the fact that you are here as a representative to the school committee.
Yes.
That you are a good student, you're probably a good all-around Swampscott, you fit that definition of what it means, what our Swampscott graduates look
Thank
like.
you, thank you.
Do you get the sense that all the kids on all the teams, or the majority, most kids on the teams get this and have that same sense of ownership?
Maybe not necessarily the ownership part, but I think on a basic level, all of our student athletes understand that if you're not prioritizing your education, if you're not understanding your fundamental in the education within your sport, you won't be getting the benefit of it and you won't be allowed to play. So I definitely think on the most basic level, like, you have to do well in school to play your sport. I think that's definitely something that all of our student athletes understand. And I think honestly the biggest reason why that's pushed so hard is because of the work that you do every single day when you're there. That's the first thing that she says to us when we come into that fall meeting, and it's pushed like through our coaches as well. Like, our coaches know that as well, like, does not matter. So yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Good advocate, you got.
Thank you. And the other thing I guess I'd piggyback off of that is I also work closely with our 2 assistant principals and Mr. Kohut as well, and also our school counseling staff. I've had multiple coaches that have sat down with Sarah Kelly, for example, and because there are certain student athletes on their teams that they feel need extra support, or maybe there's somebody they just don't feel like they're connecting with. They'll sit down with her and, as I always say, add more tools to their toolbox on how they can best help a certain student athlete and stuff like that. So we want to make sure it's not just about the athlete, it's about the student athlete, and it's about the person. That's the thing that's most important. So talking about how it translates into goals for our coaches and our athletes, all of our teams on some level will have team goals. They'll have individual goals, and they'll talk about those and refer to those. And then our coaches are all evaluated. We use a software called Coach Evaluator that is a very good software. I like it a lot because I'm able to interact electronically with our coaches, but then we meet in person so that we kind of already know what the basis is we're going to talk about, there's questions ready to go, and we go from there. So things are definitely looked at and evaluated on a regular basis for sure.
Yeah, I know that that's a question that I've gotten from other parents. Is there a formal evaluation in the same way that other professionals are? And it was an answer that I had no idea about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good to hear, actually. I did not know that, and I've got the same question.
Yep, absolutely.
And so are they evaluated annually?
Correct.
Like at the end of the season, at the beginning? Okay.
End of the season. We have preseason meetings. We all talk about goals, talk about things to work on. How did we think, last year went, again, to refresh their memories and so forth. And then we move forward about what my expectations are, what their plans may be, any questions they have or extra guidance that they may want around certain topics and stuff like that. Whether it be something as simple as scheduling their non-league opponents because we've gone to a statewide tournament and it's power rankings now, and it's very, very different than when you just had to be 500 to qualify. So what do I do about scheduling opponents? Because it's no longer scheduling somebody that I might be able to beat so I can be at 500. Now, what's my best way to amass all these power rankings? So it could be something like that, or it could be something about how do I best have an impact socially and emotionally on my student athletes. That's something I want to focus on. And each coach has different areas that they want to focus on for different reasons.
Do you find it different if they are an employee of the district versus somebody who is only coming in as a coach?
I don't think it's so much being an employee of the district. I think that coaches who are trained educators, they already have that baseline training with interacting with student athletes and how to teach, because coaching is just teaching. It is another form of teaching. So having already had, that experience as teachers and that education on how to be a teacher is definitely a leg up. But some non-teachers come in with vast coaching experience as well. So, they've had different experiences and they're able to hit the ground running too. So.
If you hear parent feedback or student feedback, is that factored into your evaluation process?
We talk about that, absolutely. And my thing always is, and it's been interesting since I've been here. When I first got here, I got a lot of emails from concernedparent@gmail.com and alike. There's no signatures. You laugh. I would get things, blank envelopes under my door.
Yeah, delete.
I would get faxes at the superintendent's office with no number or traceable number about the athletics. I would get them on the fax machine.
Huh.
Yeah, and some of them were about, my student athlete plays for Aztecs and plays this position, and the coach is only playing him in this position, and it would go on and on and on about that. Others would be talking about there's too much of a commitment. I mean, it would run, then it moved from that because I told everybody I can't really address, I'm not going to hit reply to concernedparent@gmail.com when I don't know who I'm speaking to or about or anything else. It's not going to solve anything. So then I would get emails from parents, and the last line would say, please, I don't ever want my child to know I've contacted you. They'd be horrified. They need to be involved in the conversation in most
Yeah.
cases.
I
You know
do
what I'm
think,
saying?
though, that I think a lot of parents, I shouldn't say a lot of parents, some of the parents who have spoken to me have said things along the lines of they don't want there to be any repercussions on their kids. And I get it. And, you can assure people all the time, look, these professionals, they're not going to, but at the end of the day, they don't want there to be any shred of possibility that kid's going to be benched.
Yep, and I hear that on the regular as well, and I do the best I can to reassure them that if I ever had the slightest inclination that was going on, it would be handled immediately and strongly. And I try to explain that one of the big things we're trying to instill in our student athletes is self-avocation. And if they're not comfortable being there without their parent, then there's no problem with the parent joining them in that meeting. But it's so important for them to be able to sit down and express how they're feeling or the way they're perceiving things. And there have been several occasions where a coach had no idea the way a student athlete was perceiving a certain situation. And it was resolved and things moved on in a wonderful direction. And my only regret is that the conversation didn't happen sooner. But I understand, on the other hand, that it's very difficult for a lot of student athletes to have the courage to come forward and sit in a room with their coach, their parent, and possibly me. You know, I have one of my own children who would have no issue doing it, and I have the other one that it would not happen. You know, everybody's different, right? But to try to teach them that skill and how important that is, because it's gonna come into play so many times throughout their lives. So that's the direction I'm trying to go, is to have thoughtful, meaningful conversations that we're working towards some kind of a resolution to whatever might be bothering them. So.
Can I just ask you a quick question about, you mentioned scheduling earlier. Do you schedule the games or do the coaches schedule the games?
It's a combination. So we're in the Northeastern Conference for our league. So our league schedule is given to us by the league.
Right.
And then depending on the sport, you could have anywhere from 2 to 6 openings that you have to then schedule non-league games. The vast majority of my coaches prefer to schedule their own non-league games. I have just a couple that say to me, go ahead and do it, I don't mind. Just whoever you want to schedule is fine.
Okay.
And then I do it. But for the most part, the bulk of the schedule is given to us.
Great, thank you.
Yep. All right. Talking about the school budget, and I know the question was that the majority of athletics is paid for by the school. And the reality is, it's my salary, my admin assistant salary, and the CBA coaches is what comes out of the general budget. Everything else is completely paid for by using the revolving fund, which is our gate fees, our user fees, and donations that we get.
Everything is paid for out of that?
Except for salaries and CBA.
All the coaching stipends, okay.
Correct.
Yeah, the coaching stipends that are part of the collective bargaining agreement. What we saw here, and I think what prompted part of this conversation, was the
Assistant coaches.
boosters
Right.
paying for assistant coaches that aren't part of the CBA. So I didn't know this until I saw this, that's all that the operating budget supports.
Yeah, it's not a 50-50 split. I mean, the operating budget is supporting more than the revolving fund, but that's all that's on the operating budget, yes.
But that's, I guess I'm surprised to hear that the operating, that the more than 50% doesn't cover things like uniforms and equipment.
Yeah, no, it does not. It's, right now, I want to say it's closer to 60-40,
Huh.
and 60 being on the operating budget.
And I'll be honest with you, while none of our teams are being put in a situation where they don't necessarily have what they need, there are a lot of other districts out there that they have things that are much more advanced. So like little machines in basketball that rebound for you and pass the ball back to you. You know, I could go on and on with stuff like that that we do not provide through our budget for our teams. Do they all have uniforms that they need? Absolutely. The equipment is up to date and safe, 100%. You know, they have, all that kind of stuff is in line, but they don't have some of the real perks, so to speak, that maybe some other programs have.
The
Just-
luxury items.
Does something
Thank you.
does something like that, what's the shelf life of a ball returner on a basket? I mean, sorry, I know that.
Yeah, no, I
prepared
would
to
have
talk
to,
about
I
something
would
like
have
this.
to look into it.
The reason why I ask is because I think, is this something that we should be, like, is this capital? Is this?
No, you're going after luxury items. I'm hearing the athletic director saying our teams and students have what they need. They just don't have.
They don't have perks.
They don't have the additional perks or the luxury items of some school districts.
And I can say, like, our coaches are good enough that they do a very good job. They don't necessarily need that ball return machine because they find a way to work it into practice, that it's a student athlete's doing it and working on a skill while they're doing it. You know, would it be great if a student athlete was working by themselves? Yeah. But do we make it work? Absolutely. And then we're able to then put that money towards the needed items.
Yeah, people.
Afia, you gonna?
I was just also gonna say, like, if there's never been an issue where if a team wanted to fundraise for that kind of stuff, like, let's say we wanted to fundraise for that ball machine, like, she has no issue saying, go ahead, fundraise it, as long as it's approved and there's no like extra, you know what I mean? Like there's no extra, like one team is getting something over another. Like there's really never an issue, but yeah, we always have usually what we need and more. I've never had like an issue with a sports team that like didn't have what they needed. And if there was an issue like with something that we didn't have it or it was broken, like we got a new one over the summer so that when the new season started, we were ready to go. So.
I think maybe this is part of why I asked the question, because I think about fundraising
It's just,
and.
sorry, this is what boosters, this is, a lot of the boosters buy, use the cookie dough money for sweatshirts and bling for the
Yeah.
students, right?
Yeah.
But, they should be encouraged to do less of that and more of like a gift back to the program.
Yeah.
Because that would be great, I know at one point we tried to raise money to get those shelters for the field so that the kids could stay undercover, right, during games. Just, those are things like that we don't pay for because they have what they need. There's a bench there,
Yeah.
right, and there's umbrellas if you want them, but that's like the booster part of this is really why there are boosters,
So yeah, like that's
why
why you
there
have a
are
booster.
boosters.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How does athletics tie into a vision of a graduate? I did talk about this at the fall meeting. It really ties into when we talk about philosophy and everything else, that we are educating the whole student, even during athletics. We want them to learn lessons and skills that they can use in any facet of their lives. So, as I said on here, it talks about their critical thinking ability, problem solving in athletics is at the forefront of it. Communication skills, citizenship, all of that stuff is right on target on the regular with our student athletes.
I do want to say, I asked that question, and I was very happy at parent night when that popped up on the screen, so thank you for including.
Oh, you're welcome.
I-
Intramural programs are a totally separate entity. You don't see them mixed. It's just a different type of programming that's run very, very differently. So if there was somebody here who wanted to start some kind of an intramural program, I suppose they could do that. That would be a whole nother funding thing and, so on and so forth. I would be concerned with physical space issues because between the high school and middle school athletic programs using it and then sharing also with all of our youth programs, there's not a lot of spare time and space at all, either indoors or outdoors,
I
to be
remember
honest.
one year, it was a club, like an ultimate frisbee club.
They
right?
still have that?
Yeah, so like,
Oh.
if it's run like a club, and there's enough members, you play games with each other.
Yeah, it's
There was a
not,
disc golf club 1.2, there's just been different clubs that have been sort of like this, so.
Okay.
yeah,
No.
it's not an MIA sport or anything like that, but it's, they'll go off and play other schools and that sort of thing. They have an advisor here.
Do you have oversight over that?
I do not. Nope, because they're considered activities versus athletics.
Activities.
Yeah.
Like how anyone who has an interest can start a club in anything if you can find an advisor to sort of,
And a minimum number of students to participate. Those
They
fall
can-
under student activity accounts.
So I just have a question. I think on the intramural side, first off, thank you for the answer. I was thinking a little bit more on a lower level, be it on elementary school or middle school.
So at the elementary school level, they offer, all the teachers offer different types of classes.
Right.
So, whether it be, it may be an arts and crafts type of class, it may be a mini cooking or food type of class, it could be a physical activity, it could be anything. So there's a lot of that kind of takes
Right.
precedence there. So that's what happens there. The middle school, they have some of their athletics, but they're also doing a lot of stuff with youth sports and that sort of thing.
Well, those PTO after-school clubs is what you're talking about.
Mhm.
And Mr. Knowles did an athletic one.
Yep.
And he was at both schools. So those at the elementary and at the middle school tend to fall under the PTO after-school
Activities.
programs,
there's,
right?
there's nothing to say at the middle school during that their advisory block, or the one where you went to the book club, for example, I forgot what that was called.
Yeah,
That
advisory.
block. There's nothing to say that there couldn't be a yoga one. or,
Mr. Kelishman?
or,
We've actually done, when we had our big block before COVID.
Wind block, that's
We
right.
had podcasting, we had yoga, we
Yeah,
had chess,
so-
we had all, people would just sign up, and if we had another kids that we haven't covered, we would run it, so.
But the advisory is for students to get assistance or,
Yeah, but we used every Wednesday for one marking period for that, sort of offering something extra.
Like that fun thing.
Yeah.
yeah.
How's participation?
I mean, it was years ago, so before, but it was
All right.
250 kids. We had 30 teachers volunteer. We had to turn teachers away.
I mean, I can tell you it's what got my kid to school.
Great.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
sorry, Joe, we need to do better.
Steps,
Do you think there's value in, I don't wanna put more on your plate. Do you think that there's value, like, I just think about what the rigor that you know, that you're bringing to the sports program, and maybe I'm thinking about the kids who want to be active, but not necessarily athletes. So physically like, where does that fit into our mindset as a school and as a district?
well, I can tell you that the weight room is open every single day. And we currently don't have somebody, but we're still looking. There's an actual position for somebody in the weight room that will work with student athletes to form their own fitness plans, depending on what their goals are, show them how to use all the equipment, mentor them in it. They'll do cardiovascular stuff as well. So there is definitely that's offered for somebody who, students that want to move but don't necessarily want to be part of a team. Maybe they work part-time and there's only a few days a week that they want to do this, or whatever it may be. That's a definite option for them. And then there's some of our sports, just by virtue of the sport, it allows for a wider range of, not time commitment, because if you're going to be on the team, you should be there, but for skill level and so forth. Cross country, for example, some people are like, oh, no way, I'm not running a 5K all the time, like, that's not for me. But it's not to say that you have to do it in 12 minutes. It's at your pace. It's about self-improvement throughout the season and so on and so forth. You look at track and field, indoor or outdoor, there's such a wide variety of events, from throwing events to jumping events to sprinting to intermediate distance, long distance, that there's, I'd almost say there's something for everybody. And those coaches are even willing to say, if there's a student athlete that said, I do not want to compete, like, that is not my thing. Come to practice every day, get your workout in, be part of the team, and come to the meets and support, and maybe help us if we have a home meet and we're running the meet. That's perfectly fine. Not a problem.
I will say that several years ago, when one of my kids was a senior, doing that, getting ready for soccer in summer, and he threw javelin. And loved throwing javelin. And has done a little bit of a club at college. So I think it's great. The more programs we can have, across the schools, be it intramural or find someone for the weight room or something. I think it's the more the merrier.
I agree.
You keep everybody healthy.
Yep. And the next question about making sure that there's equity, I'm constantly monitoring for equity to make sure, like I said before, from a need standpoint, that everybody has what they need. That, when we look at night games, for instance, that field hockey and girls and boys soccer have an equal amount of night games. Across the board, all about that. Uniforms are in a 4-year rotation, so every team's getting new uniforms every 4 years. It's not, it's not one team that's been in a uniform for 8 years and it's not in good shape and so on and so forth. We like to keep everything fair and equitable, so.
Okay. Have you seen any challenges with the equity that we're doing right now?
In what regard, what do you mean?
I think it's important, at least I know to me, is that anything we do is equitable across all the sports. So again, whether it's uniforms, whatever it is, have you noticed any challenge between the sports of anything that has made you pause about equity?
I can't say that anything jumps out.
Okay.
you know, I haven't had a situation where I have a team that doesn't necessarily, it's interesting because every team has such different needs.
Right.
For different reasons, just by virtue of the sport.
Yeah, which is why, like, you can't necessarily say, okay, everybody gets $100, because
No,
you don't, it's more than that.
and there's a lot that people don't realize. People don't realize that track and field is extremely expensive to
Right.
run.
Right.
People don't realize that, because if you're not immersed in it, sort of like I am or our coaches, you don't realize how expensive officials are for track and field, how expensive it is to take.
Javelins are not cheap.
Javelins are
Javelins are
super
not cheap.
expensive. If you ever were aware of how expensive it is to replace high jump mats, you would not believe it. You know, one trip into the Reggie,
What's a Reggie?
it's the Reggie Lewis Track and Field Center in Boston where the kids compete. Between the cost of the bus and the cost of the rental for the Reggie, it's up there. So there's little nuances like that. You know, people think like golf, oh, that's not too bad.
No, that's expensive.
It gets there.
Right, I mean, one of the things that I think that I know I'm enjoying about this discussion is, you know, even though I've had kids go through the system, and you and I spoke a little bit about this, this is real education for me. And, you know, I know we have a ways to go, but this kind of communication is great.
I agree.
It really, really is. So thank you for the answer on equity.
Absolutely.
So, and I know that it's part of some of the questions further along, you know, but I'm thinking about, and I'm also listening to some of the questions that I'm getting, you know, on the sidelines, that I think this popped up very specifically for me when I saw that field hockey and girls soccer, I think it was, raised money for more coaches. So they gave us a check we accepted the donation of like $2,300. And I thought, okay, well, where's the donation from the football team? Or why isn't that equitable?
It could be if that's what the coaches and the boosters talked about and wanted. So football was going to actually have a donation that was coming your way, but then we had a coach that resigned.
Oh.
So the person who the donation was going to be for moved into that position that was already funded. So that's why that didn't come through. Boys soccer has 3 coaches that absolutely refuse to be paid. They want to be volunteer coaches. They want to work with the kids. They want to volunteer. They don't want to be paid. So that's why those boosters are taking that money and putting it elsewhere. So like I said, every team kind of has their nuances of what they need and what their wishes and their hopes are.
So is there a rule, like the minimum amount of coaches? Like, does the MIA say you have to have one head coach and one varsity coach, one JV coach, or for football, one head coach and a defense and an offensive coordinator?
No, there's no.
So do we have a minimum that we want, like for safety? Like, you know, for example, you know, soccer has a male head coach. Do we want to always require to have a female assistant coach? Do we want to always require to have an assistant coach? Like, and I think like any position we want to require, we should be funding. Like that should be part of the CBA, right? And then everything else that's optional should be funded by raising money, right?
So I'll tell you, the coaches' stipends have not changed since, I don't know how many years before I got here. And I've been here for 8 years.
Yeah, no,
So
they're
part of the CBA is we're going back to the table, and stipends are going to be discussed.
Yes.
Mr. Kalishman,
Can I chime in?
I guess?
So, sorry, it's just so pertinent. So I was the varsity baseball coach here for 6 years. Just for a point of reference, I made more as the JV coach at Masco than I did as the varsity coach in Swampscott. Not that it was about the money, but just one of the most difficult things, I think, was the fundraising for assistant coaches. And you do need assistant coaches. God forbid somebody...
You definitely do.
Yeah.
You know, and
You definitely have to have an assistant coach, and especially on a girls' team with a male coach, like you just do.
yeah.
Like,
So the way it plays out usually, and I know it's changed since because the booster rules have changed, but we would fundraise for our assistant coaches. So essentially money that could have gone to things for the kids, we're going, I mean, the coaches are ultimately for the kids, but that's something that if was off the table, we could have had those,
Sweatshirts,
or beyond, right?
ball returners.
Yes, exactly. That's a $300. You get one from the school. It's,
Right.
you know, you have to pay for those things. Or a lot of coaches would just split up the check and be like, you know what, it's not really about the money. I'll divide it by 3 or 4, and that's how you get by. So,
But I think it's important just to say publicly that the committee knows in terms of our interest-based bargaining, we are going back to the table with the union. The union recognizes the stipends haven't been touched for years, and that is part of what we're going back to the table for, so.
But I think there's.
I think too, the not only the stipends, the money, so to speak, but looking at,
What's required?
you're right, like how many coaches are gonna be in
So, yeah,
that.
that was my question. So, like,
We should have, I mean, I think it's important for you to sort of delineate that. Like, I have to have 2 coaches at the varsity level and 1 at the JV level, or the JV coach has to.
well, like, for example, this year,
Right.
the field hockey program exploded. There's 40 kids there.
Mhm.
So, by nature of the fact that there are more kids, do they get more coaches? I don't know.
Not necessarily per the contract, but it's my belief that for safety,
Right.
Right.
you need to have, that's why when they come to me and they're like, listen, we had
But
an,
then do you cut them when all of a sudden the team gets anemic and?
I can tell you, I would never want to get rid of a really good coach.
Yeah.
And those 3 coaches are very good coaches. You know,
No, and I'm not suggesting that you do, but
No, no,
I'm
no, I
saying,
know,
like,
I'm
if
just-
you're hiring
I-
by numbers, then you have to make hard decisions when you don't have numbers.
I think you hire not only by numbers, but by nature of the sport as well. You know, possibility of injury, you know, within a sport. So if I take a sport like golf, for example, there's different levels and different skill levels, right? But the golf swing doesn't change for each golfer. You look at a sport like football, there's so many different positions being played out on that field that require so many different skill sets and a coach that has knowledge of how to teach those skill sets, and it's an injury possibility. If a coach is teaching tackling incorrectly, student athlete could be hurt.
Right.
You know, you look at a sport like soccer and field hockey and stuff like that, you know, you have your field players, but you also have goalies that need to be trained how to play that position. 2 very different skill sets. You know, how do you make all that work? You know, we have swimming and diving, and it's always, we're trying to make sure the assistant coach has a little bit of diving experience and trying to figure, you know, navigating every sport has its own intricacies. And that's the thing, there's no way to lay down a blanket over it all and say, for every 10 athletes, we should have 1 coach, because it really does depend on the nature of the sport.
But it really has, I mean, so that's the argument for saying football has to have 3 coaches, right? It has to have a head coach and an offensive and a defensive coach, or special teams and a defensive coach. And track and field always has to have, you know,
Throwing coach and a distance coach.
distance coach, a sprinting coach, and a field coach,
Yep.
right? Like, it just has to, I mean, but I think we should know that ahead of time, that this is the bare minimum that
Right.
we need to fund.
Yeah, that we've got to make it work.
That we have to
Yeah.
fund, we're gonna run these programs, we have to provide the coaches, right? And the
Correct.
insurance for the coaches and all that stuff, right? And then the nice to have is like an extra assistant coach or a goalie coach maybe, I mean, you know,
Sometimes, like, you talk about girls and boys soccer, their
like the goalie coach.
their boosters have come together and co-funded a goalie coach that might come a couple times a week to work specifically with the goalies. So they do get very creative.
Right.
And the trick with the boosters is, it depends. Some parents on some booster clubs are very involved and sell a ton of cookie dough. And then there's other teams that they're not as interested in trying to raise funds.
But I think like that's a conversation for the beginning of the year sports meetings too.
Right.
Correct,
Like-
and it
like,
is,
right?
and it's something I mentioned more this year than I have in the past, because we're just coming out of COVID, and the boosters weren't really doing a whole lot during COVID for obvious reasons. So to try to get people who may not have a not working knowledge of the boosters, that it's there, and my coaches were told to give their boosters an opportunity to speak during their
Well,
individual meetings too.
I mean, I speak from experience here that, with my daughter on 2 different teams, it's 2 very different experiences with boosters.
Absolutely.
And that also makes me question about equity. And you think, it's like a chicken and egg. When you get a successful team, like the football team, when, they're going to the Super Bowl,
State
thank you. I know so much about
That was quite a brain.
that it generates more boosters, and then they are able to raise more money, and then they can spend money on these things that help them get better. Whereas you have a team that is not nearly as winning, like the girls softball team, that has like no booster club and no assets, and you think, well, like, how do they get over that hump? And I think that isn't necessarily a question about male-female equity, but how committed are we to a sport? To fund it? Do we help those clubs or those teams that are really struggling? I don't know, and this is where,
Yeah.
obviously, I'm not an AD.
Yep. No, I will tell you that one of the caveats with football is that it's a sport that's been around forever. Okay, so it has very deep roots for, Swampscott football has just had a book published about it. I mean, there's people who just constantly want to give money to football because they played as a youngin' and it had a big impact. So whereas other teams, softball, for example, which I'm very, very passionate about, hasn't been around for as long. You don't have a deep alumni that is saying, hey, how can we help? How can we help? How can we help? I talk with Coach Serino, and he's like, geez, this person came back and is wanting to do this, and this wants to do, and some other teams, just by virtue of longevity possibly, don't have that. But cross country, track and field, their boosters do extremely well. And it's not that they've been uber successful or anything like that. I honestly, my feeling, and it's a feeling, is that it just depends on the parents, how much they want to get involved, our student athletes, how much do they want to get out there and do the fundraising.
It's, yeah.
And it's not
how much cookie dough can
seriously,
actually
because
stay
if
in
I
that
have
Yeah.
a group of girls, I'm learning this every single day. Being a captain is something that I didn't even realize was so much work. But like, I only have so much communication to the JV and freshman levels, and right now we're trying to navigate, like, how do I get the communication from varsity all the way through? And it's like, there's a gap, honestly, and she's right. Like, how do you communicate this information? How do you get them all involved? And how is everybody involved on your team? And that's really it, it's making everyone included is a huge part of it. And if it's only one side, then it really doesn't work. And I think that's the main part of it, honestly. It's like, how much do people care enough to get involved, and how much is the word out there?
Right.
Well, I think you bring up something really important, and having seen that on the softball team, like, I didn't even know there was no communication from those senior players down to the JV players. So, maybe,
Then that's like a coach and captain kind of thing. So, but yes, I totally
you have to
understand.
rely on the strength of your coach.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I think too, by the time you get to the spring, people don't have the same energy
Oh, they don't.
in the spring that they do in the fall. I mean,
Right.
I have to
I don't know. I
have,
mean, those lacrosse kids, they've got a lot of dough.
I have to have conversations with my senior athletes as we approach the spring to say, listen, I'm telling you now, it's going to be super hard to stay engaged, but you have to stay engaged. When you're still in the state tournament after you've graduated,
Yeah, that's hard.
Right.
it's really hard.
Right.
So anyway, but yeah,
That's interesting about spring versus fall.
Right. So let me because I want you to move on. It's just an important part, and Suzanne, you had brought it up. I think we do have to fund this just differently and better than we are. And to your point about, if there is a male coaching a female team or a female coaching a male team, I think it is appropriate to have a second coach of that gender.
It doesn't have to be the same gender. It could just be a second coach. It's just nice to have another adult.
Right.
Just for everyone's,
Yeah.
just for safety reasons
Right.
in case someone gets hurt. But
Plus,
then also just to have another adult to have more eyes and ears or
And as
or
we
whatever.
become more evolved about gender and,
Yeah.
and that it's not an either or.
Right.
Yeah, but also, I just think, I think that when we talk about stipends, it'll be a big discussion. I
Right.
think it's really important that you know generally what we should be funding for every sport or every
Right.
team, like JV and varsity or whatever, like just
Right.
to know when times get tough, this is the pecking order of cutting too, like, you know, JV gets cut or, like, we just need to know. So that
Right.
it's not based on people, it's based on position.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have that on your schedule to look at those, how often do you look at those stipends? Annually, or?
She hasn't changed them in 8 years.
Yeah,
I mean, I know you haven't changed the numbers, like the, you know, how much they get paid, but the actual roles themselves.
I don't have the ability to change those either.
Huh.
Okay, why don't,
So
I think that's interesting.
Before we jump off, I totally agree about funding these other
Yeah.
assistant positions, totally agree on that. We should have been doing that a long time ago.
right, I agree.
I just wanted to pick up on something the athletic director said, which I think is really very important, and I'm really glad you mentioned it, was kind of you mentioned cross-country as an example, you know, kind of the enthusiasm level, you know, of the parents, of the students, and, you know, I've seen that, you know, with the various cheer teams over the years as well. You know, it's not high profile, but it's,
Yep.
you know, there's a lot of expenses, you know, there's music, there's
Traveling,
choreographers,
yeah.
there's, you know, cheer bows and.
Yeah, people don't realize that the cheerleaders are paying for a choreographer to come in and choreograph
You know.
their competition routine.
Right.
Like, there's so much behind the scenes that a lot of people just don't understand.
So, yeah, I guess, you know, just, you know, adding on to that, you know, I think the kids are educated early on, like, right, even before the season, you know, really kicks off. It's like, hey, these are things, this is why we have to fundraise, this is why it's important. And it sounds like it's happening in these other sports as well, but it's, you know, at the end of the day, I think the kids see you know, and I know just from the cheer program, they see what their hard work results in. It's like, hey, we were able to hire a top-tier choreographer, or we were able to, you know, get the copyright for that music that we wanted that costs, you know, $400, something like that.
Is there, like, from the cheer parents, is there a general sense of, like, this is just what we do, or is there the sense of, why isn't this being paid for?
I think there's a sense of this is what we do, but, you know, I know that the assistant position is booster as well, so that.
Well, there's one assistant.
One assistant,
One,
right.
there's a head and there's an assistant.
Right.
And then if they wanted, like Ricky used to do a lot with tumbling and that sort of thing, that was an additional thing that they had
That they've
asked for and the boosters funded.
So I guess the point is, you know, if we were across the board, you know, covering these things, you know, I think someone else said, you know, it would free up,
Right.
you know, monies, you know, that, you know, they could hire, you know, another trainer or another, you know, choreographer or something to help them when they
Correct.
get to competition, you know, you know, to really, you know, do the best they can. And I think that applies to all these sports.
Right, I agree. Yep.
Sorry. I think the biggest success of the program is that we've begun doing leadership training and DEIB training with our student athletes, both as a school and a league. I've often said to parents that have come to me and been like, you know, you need to get rid of this coach. You know, they've only had a 500 record. They haven't been over 500 in 4 years. And I say, that's not my first thing that I'm looking at as an athletic director, I'll be honest with you. It's about the experience that student athletes have. How do they treat student athletes? What life lessons are they teaching? Yes, do they need to have X's and O's and be able to teach the skills? Absolutely. But on the other hand, we're also a public school, and the athletes that live in town are the athletes that live in town.
Right.
You know, we're not a St. John's Prep that's recruiting from 4 states and everything else. So you can only do so much with what you have, so to speak. So that's important to me as far as the strength goes versus we won a Super Bowl or, you know, our field hockey team went to the Eastern Mass State Finals. Those things are phenomenal. However, I don't see those as our biggest successes. And I think the biggest weakness is trying to recruit and retain qualified top-tier coaches. The coaches we have are great, trying to find them is so difficult. It is really, back when I started being an athletic director, if you put up a posting for any kind of a coach, baseball coach, since Mr. Kalishman's here, you would get upwards of 30 to 40 applicants. Now, if we put it up, we're lucky if we get 4 applicants.
And why do you think that is?
A lot of people, honestly, are getting out of coaching because number one, the pay is awful for the amount of time you put in. And if it's a young coach that's then trying to cover daycare while they're coaching, they're ending up on the negative. But they also don't want to deal with, quite frankly, a lot of the extra stuff that they deal with parents. There are a number of parents out there that are downright nasty, and they just don't want to do it. I've seen it from a parent standpoint, watching, my own children's teammates' parents, and I just look at them and like, you're an athletic director, aren't you going to say something? I said, not tonight, I'm not, I'm a parent, I'm not going to say a word.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult, and for some people, they say,
Not worth it.
it's not worth it.
Right.
So I think that's an issue that we need to look at,
Heard you mention referees at your presentation last week, too.
Yeah.
Yes. I had quite an issue during our spring season with one of our teams and the parents, and I actually had a group of moms come up to me and say, these referees aren't good enough. What if we pool our money together and hire our own referees? That's not ethical. You can't just handpick your referees and pay them yourself. So anyways, but that's some of the challenges, right? The referees are saying, it's not worth my $90
Right.
to drive to a location and officiate,
To listen to
get
that.
totally, just
Rated.
Right.
awful. I have to escort them off the field and tell our parents to be quiet while they're screaming at them. I mean, it's just not appropriate. So that's why we have a referee shortage. Oh my God. Because nobody wants to do that. But anyways, I don't want to go off on that tangent. The next question is about if there's any strings when we get donations and gifts. In almost every case that I've come across, a donation or gift is almost a thank you for something that's already happened. The cross-country one was for, his student athlete had such a phenomenal experience, and he was just so thankful. We had quite
He's not even in the district anymore, you said.
Correct. He went to St. John's Prep. I know. But Dad was so thankful for the experience that he had and the opportunities that he had that he called and said, can I please give a donation? And I said, sure, if that's something you'd like to do. Was not expecting the size of the donation that he so generously gave. But it was just a thank you, and please, use it for whatever's best for the student athletes.
He's a senior this year?
He was a freshman. He's a sophomore.
So
He was young.
They recruited him.
Well, I can't say that, but maybe. And then the question in regard to the ski program, we had 3 or 4 skiers who were avid skiers before they got to high school. The parents kind of mobilized and really wanted their student athlete to have a chance to ski in high school. So we came, we got the program off the ground, but said, we can't fund it. It has to be self-funded. So in the conversations I had, they had a whole list of fundraising things that they were going to do, and that we took all those student athletes' user fees and put it towards the cost of that particular sport. And whatever balance was left, they were supposed to pay for out of that fundraising. It wasn't until afterwards that I was made aware of what actually went on with the payment. So I can't speak that I would have ever let that happen, but I don't.
Okay.
They decided not to do the fundraising, and a parent just wrote a check.
Oh, yeah, that I know.
I was unaware of that at the time. They were supposedly having silent auctions and dances and all kinds of fun things, so.
Well, I think that's also where it comes in, where you start to talk about what's equity. And so if you have somebody who is affluent and you get to pick and choose a sport that then dies when the donor's gone.
Yeah, well, anyone who wants to participate still has the opportunity to do that. And I'll be honest, last year I worked hard trying to find out if anybody wanted to participate, and we only had like 4 students, so which we'll get to in a minute, but we formed a co-op with Haverhill High School because they needed a few more skiers as well. I don't know that we'll have anybody, honestly, this year.
Yeah, because then that ties into are we fielding too many teams?
I think it depends on the kind of team. Skiing, if you're a skier, and you're probably not doing much else during the winter.
Yeah.
But anyways, so, I think we already kind of talked about that.
Right.
Yep. Is success dictated by money? I really don't think so. I think money, I think it's more the experience that people had when you talk about donors, like I talked about before. When you're a public school, like I said, we're not drawing from anywhere other than Swampscott and Nahant and some of our Boston student athletes that participate. We're not offering scholarships for kids to play. We're doing the best we can with our Swampscott kids that are passionate and want to play. So, fielding too many teams. I don't really think we're fielding too many teams. I think that over the last 4 years, we've seen a decline in participation for a variety of reasons, especially coming out of COVID. There were a lot of athletes that participated for a couple of years in a certain sport, but when we first came back from COVID, they weren't comfortable with it, so they didn't. Numbers are almost back up to where they were pre-COVID now. I don't know that I would be looking to add anything at this point, but I do think that what I like is that the offerings that we have every season, there's a variety of different types of sports. So if somebody wanted to get involved in a sport, they could. There's always a couple sports in each season that doesn't necessarily have a youth program, a feeder program, so somebody could just pick it up like this and decide that they just want to experience it, and that's okay. Versus, you have a sport like basketball. If you didn't start playing that at a young age, it's going to be pretty hard to pick up those skills and make a team because it's so skill-based. You know what I mean? It's not something you can just pick up like this. So I don't think so. And I think the other thing about being able, the MIAA now offering us the opportunity because of our numbers of making it possible for 8th graders to play up, is it frees up space on our middle school rosters for more middle schoolers to participate. But it also gets our 8th graders a little bit of experience at the high school level without taking away from any of their eligibility. And the other thing that I feel strongly about is I make it an option. There are some schools that if they get an 8th grade waiver, the 8th graders don't have a choice. They have to play in the high school program.
Really?
I philosophically just don't believe in that. I think that a parent and a student athlete have to make their decisions. Some student athletes, developmentally might feel like they're ready to take that step. Others may be very uncomfortable moving up to the high school level and are more comfortable staying at the middle school. And again, I feel like that's a family decision, so I leave that as a choice.
It's also a very different price point. So
It is.
like, to force somebody to pay
Yep, but it's a much more robust experience at the high school level, so
Oh,
to
yeah.
speak. You're getting a lot more games, you're getting more practice time, those sorts of things. So, yeah, again,
No,
it's.
I mean, it makes sense
it's-
why they would pay the same amount as the high schoolers that are
Right.
playing, because they're getting that high school experience.
Right.
But to your point, like, you can't, if you're not giving them the option to play at their level.
Absolutely.
So is it typical for other schools our size to be bringing up kids from 8th grade?
Absolutely. And I will tell you that per MIAA rules, so I'll take Saugus, for example, they just built a middle high school combination. MIAA rules, they don't even have to ask for permission. They could have one of their 6th graders on their varsity team if they wanted to. It's totally up to the school to do it. They don't even have to ask because they're all under one principal, one school.
Poor 6th grader.
Yeah, well, they don't do that. They did have an 8th grader that's a starting point guard on their girls' basketball team this year, but there are certain sports you can do that.
Right.
In others,
You can't.
you do not.
It was interesting, thank you.
Girls' flag football, that falls under the same category as it's an activity. It's a senior-specific activity. If it were a sport, they'd be paying the user fee. All those coaches would have to go through all the coaching training that our regular coaches do, which is significant. And they really don't have anybody to play. They just have one opponent for that one game. So that's why it's classified as an activity versus a sport. I was just asked, I was told that historically, and I was glad to help, that the role of the athletic director is simply to make sure that the game happens, because it being an activity, depending on who's coaching, they may or may not have experience of how do you get all the game staff, how do you order officials, how do you order rent the bleachers because we have such a big crowd, how do you organize all the tickets, what do you do with this, that, how do you order the flags, where do you get the footballs from, all those sorts of things that kind of are my athletic world is what I help with. I make sure that they have gym space if they need to practice indoors, and I work cooperatively with them with outdoor field space when they want to practice outdoors. So that's where that kind of goes. And it is more of a fun activity for, we have some student athletes that they literally have to start with, it's called offense when you have the ball, and it's called defense when you don't, because you have such a wide range.
It's a one-time thing.
It's
an activity.
literally a one-time thing. So anyways, you can see the equity between girls and boys sports. It's extremely equitable. I put the numbers down right there. The girls are short one JV team because girls ice hockey, the sport is just not popular enough that there's enough girls that play to have a JV level team.
That's great. I didn't know this information.
Isn't this fantastic?
This is outstanding. So you've been chatting for a while, and I want to be mindful of your time. So I'd just like to maybe jump to a couple things, if that's
Absolutely.
okay with everybody, and feel free to jump in. There are some towns that have one booster account, whether someone gives money for football, someone for softball, and then the athletic director or their designee doles out the money for whatever they need. We obviously don't choose to do that. I'm just curious of your philosophy of one versus another.
So I will tell you that when I was at Manchester Essex, that was the way that it was structured.
Right.
Marblehead is the only school in the Northeastern Conference that is structured that way.
Right.
Basically, what their All Booster Club provides for is, and I'm making this up as I don't know the exact items, but it could be a blanket for every senior as they graduate. They don't do anything for a particular team that might need or want something. It's more generalized. The problem that is with it is equity becomes a big issue, and my experience was a lot of kind of head-to-head, well, the soccer team raised more money than the softball team, so the softball team shouldn't get the same stuff that the soccer team gets, for example, so on and so forth. There was a lot of that. Your student athletes didn't do as much as mine, and so it became contentious. It was very difficult. More of my parents volunteered in the snack shack during Thanksgiving than yours. It was all that sort of thing because it isn't a real intimate buy-in, I guess. Do you know what I'm saying? Whereas when you're working for just your student athlete's team and you're seeing the results directly, it's a little bit different.
You are all in. All right.
So anyway,
great.
Like I said, most schools go the separate route
Great.
for those reasons.
I noticed that when at the football game last year, over in Marblehead, as we walked in, it was their booster club that was running it.
They use that as their fundraiser. In Swampscott, we don't have the option of doing that. Well, we do, but our concession stand down at Phillips Park at Bloxage at the Turf goes out to bid every year by the town. And whatever group bids the highest gets to run that stand for the year.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the stand down at the Little League fields. Well, youth football, I don't know if they're the only bidders because thankfully I'm not part of that. And I don't have anything to do with what goes on in that stand other than, buying my dinner there on Friday nights. Because it's a town, it's funky down there, as you know. The field and the concession stand belong to the town. The building belongs to the school. So it's a little bit of back and forth with things.
Right.
So.
And then I want to jump because I'm really just curious. You talked earlier about the co-op teams, and I see on here, so we have skiing, wrestling, gymnastics, girls ice hockey, so I was going to ask about that, and sailing. How are those co-op teams working?
So MIA rules with co-ops.
Yeah.
It's very strict.
Right.
The only way you can have a co-op is if both teams, or should I say neither team, can field and have a program without the other's help because of number of athletes.
Right.
Okay? So that's number one. Then you have to have the support of the athletic directors, the principals, the school committee, and the superintendent of both districts, or with girls ice hockey, 3, 4, 5 districts, to come together. Then the league also has to approve it.
Right.
And then as does your district committee for the MIAA. So it's quite a process. So Amy, what you had kept seeing come over for you from FormStack from the MIAA was our actual application, to make you aware that the application went in.
We'll get those soon.
Yeah.
I can hardly wait.
You don't have to do anything.
So that's what that is. And it's basically saying our wrestlers, for example, if we didn't co-op and start that co-op, then neither of us would have had enough wrestlers for any of our student athletes to experience that sport. It's the same thing with sailing. It's the same thing with, and whoever is the host school, those student athletes are considered to be their athletes. So our student athletes that wrestle, do gymnastics or girls ice hockey, Dan Bauer, the principal at Marblehead, can actually suspend our student athletes from school.
Okay.
That's an MIAA rule. They're very stringent. People will come up to me once in a while, like last year when Peabody High couldn't have an ice hockey team, they're like, what are you doing? Let's go. They got a couple good players. Well, the other problem is when you have a co-op, whatever school's a higher division, that's where you have to play. So had we taken on those 3 Peabody High ice hockey teams, our ice hockey team would have gone from Division III in the state tournament to Division I playing against St. John's Prep.
Right.
I'm like, you really do not want your child on the ice in that situation.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of nuances, again, that people don't understand with the co-op. So that's the way it works. You have to meet all these thresholds and approvals, and the MIAA does have a bottom line number. So for ice hockey, if you have 18 ice hockey players in your program, don't even apply for a co-op, they will deny it, because you have enough.
So like the wrestling program, what happens if all of a sudden Marblehead gets enough kids who want to wrestle? Do we get booted?
Yes, the co-op is supposed to be immediately dissolved,
Wow,
but any student athlete who's in the program
can stay.
Grandfathered in.
can either choose to stay or choose to go wherever the Swampscott kids go moving forward.
Okay.
Okay? So the kids don't automatically get the rug pulled out from underneath them, so to speak, but as a school, we would need to find another avenue for any
Another
rising
partner.
freshmen who may want to then enjoy that sport.
That's great. I mean, I just have one comment before I go. Does anyone else have a comment for Ms. Farley? It's because it's getting late.
Okay.
Anyone?
I do have a question.
Okay?
And it's about your role in scheduling with the town. And I just wanted to ask you how that was going. That's not on my question. I hope that's okay. And I don't.
Yes, that's okay,
If you-
Ms. Former
if-
Chair.
If you, no, but I'm
Yeah.
perfectly willing to hear. I'll get back to you on that.
No, it's fine. So it's a lot. I'll be honest, it is a lot. There's a lot of opinions out there, obviously. But I think that it's helpful for us as well, because Linda and I work cooperatively together. We understand what goes into maintenance. We have very good communication with Mike Chakoutis, who works his tail off keeping up with those fields. He's basically the one-hand guy that fixes all of our fields, working with Gino Cresta and all that sort of stuff, trying to do everything we can. And it ensures that, as it should be, and as we've discussed with people, that the high school teams should have the field when they need to have the field. And we work really hard to make sure that we have a schedule that allows everybody else to use it too, and that we work cooperatively with the youth soccer and the lacrosse and the football and anybody else that wants to use it, that they understand that I'm not going to bump them off the field unless I have no other choice, unless that's the only time we can get on the field to play a game before a cutoff date. So we try to work really carefully. But it's a lot of work, but it would be a lot of work for anyone.
Have we generated any income renting out that turf field like we had talked about?
So all that is in the town's hands because it's a town field. Basically, Linda and I,
But you manage it.
what we do is we give people permits, we approve permits, we put together the schedule. If the field has to be closed because of weather, we'll close the fields, we'll be the ones that put that message out and so on and so forth. People will send their fees for the field to us, and then Linda deposits them and they go into a town account and the town controls all that. I will tell you that including the school district, every nighttime user now is now being charged a fee per kilowatt or whatever it is for all the lights, and so on and so forth. So, it's moving in the right direction, but we have to be careful renting out the field because the more you rent it out,
The more it's used.
the more it's used, and sometimes outside rental groups don't respect it, like those people who are in town and are abiding by the rules for the most part. It's very hard to hold them accountable.
Right. Thank you. So I only have one more comment. First, before I even get into that, this has been an amazing presentation. And, Pam and I spoke about, and Pam said, you're gonna be blown away. I need to tell you, I am.
Thank you.
I actually am. Having kids who have played sports and, being very involved in boosters, you really get to this bubble, right? It's so this was great. And that's gonna lead me to communication. If I could make a suggestion, and take this as it is, just because of you're one person and the sheer number of sports that we have, if there are students in the high school or middle school for that matter, who are interested in either communications, on a social media, who may or may not be athletes, who could help you with, announcing the scores from a Twitter account. And getting that information out to parents. Win, lose, or draw, it doesn't really matter. Right?
You do a great job, I'm sure.
Right.
I know.
She does an amazing
She's an
job.
awesome job, I'm
I
sure.
always get a notification. I can be like home in bed and be like, retweet.
And I don't know if you're aware too, that we do have a Twitter account, our Swamp student account too,
Yeah.
that every year I have to approve new
Yes,
students to take that
yes.
over, so.
They
I think
are,
it's
but
sometimes confusing because there are so many Twitter accounts.
yes, there are so many. There's the
that I think
individual
things
teams.
get lost in the
There's
shuffle.
Big Blue Sports. There's the student fan Twitter. But I think that's a great idea.
It is.
As much communication as possible because it's what I said to you when we spoke that Kelly's going to come before you and she has all the answers. It's just she's so in the weeds in the work
Right.
that
Right. And I definitely see that. So maybe that's just a suggestion, because I know there are kids out there who is, kind of like the kids who did, robotics, right? That's exciting stuff. And someone, or, one or two students who, may or may not be into the athletics, yet like to be around it and are interested in journalism, who are looking forward to, a college career in
Sports
journalism.
communication.
Yeah, may be willing to help you and just take some of that, as long as obviously you have to train and
Oh, yeah.
I don't even want to talk about that, but even could help. And for them, it's something for them to put on a resume.
Yep.
So just something to
I
think about.
actually would love to take, you talk about some of the seniors that have extra study halls or something
Right.
like that.
Yeah,
And I know that
for
time's
sure.
valuable because they have a million things going on, but what if they wanted to do an internship and see what it's like to be an athletic administrator or do
definitely
sports
have that,
management
for
or
sure.
something like that?
Senior project.
Yeah, we
Senior
definitely
project,
have
exactly.
that. It's not heavily advertised just because it is hard and it adds another thing onto your plate. But like one thing that we can speak from on the volleyball level is we just brought up a full-time manager for the girls, for us. And she takes care of all of our social medias. She takes care of all of our like the nitty-gritty things that,
Is she a student?
yeah, she's a student, she's
Yeah,
a senior.
we started that just before COVID,
And then
and COVID hit.
right.
A bunch
And I
of the
know
teams have
football has
them.
one too. Football has
Yep.
one that's like specifically for film. So it is there. It's just not heavily advertised because it's another thing added to her.
So it's just a suggestion, but again, I want to say thank you.
Absolutely.
You are absolutely right. I learned a ton in your, a little longer than I'm sorry that it took so long.
No, it's
but
okay.
I have learned a ton.
I would rather people have the answers and the understanding, and I'm more than happy anytime to,
Well, I.
Let you know.
For me personally, I appreciate this.
Sure.
I feel much more knowledgeable. Again, back to what Suzanne said, I think we have to look at, I know we are looking at the stipends. If we need more coaches, it's short dollars. We should provide that coaches, and that frees up the booster money to get whatever it is that team needs.
and I'm happy to, as you begin to look, if you'd like me to gather the coaches' salaries or stipends from other leagues.
Yes.
The other people in our
Very
league and
helpful.
stuff like that, so that you can kind of have an
in your
idea.
spare time, please do that before we go back into bargaining.
Right.
Like, when you're doing that, I think you should sort of draft what you think is the appropriate coaches
Yeah.
for each team. Like,
Right.
Yes.
Yep.
you know,
Happy to do that.
justify the position.
Yeah, I didn't realize that you didn't have the bandwidth to add on.
No. And the other thing, when I came in, the boosters were just writing checks to the coaches.
Oh.
Like,
Right, yeah.
like, oh, you want to get paid this much? Here you go. So that was straightened out, that's why the donation comes to athletics. So this has been going on for a very long time. It's just that now the donation comes in and they're paid through payroll, so everybody's aware of what's
Between
going
that
on.
and the uniforms, you straightened out immediately,
Well,
right?
That was
Right.
like,
Yeah, that drove you bananas.
that was like one of my things.
But,
Right.
but, you know, when those gifts came before us this year, that was the first time, I believe, that we've seen that. And I appreciate that because I think it adds a level of understanding for everybody
Yep.
about what's going on, what's even, what's fair.
Right.
I'm glad to know that the football team didn't submit their check because they had whatever change within their organization. But having that information out there is good, because these are the kinds of things, and you can't communicate everything, because then nobody hears anything. But I think that level of, there needs to be some kind of medium somewhere. I don't know if it's like an annual athletics report or something like that, so that people do understand the equity.
Yep.
I like that.
Yeah, so do I, get an annual.
An annual report.
Yeah, and the other thing that went along with them being paid through payroll is that they had to be paid based on the amounts on the contract.
Right.
You couldn't just arbitrarily decide you were gonna
Oh,
pay.
you're worth more. Yeah.
Right.
Or we got a bargain with you.
Again, the equity piece that we talk about was important.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
You're very welcome,
Kelly, I
anytime.
want to say thank you so much for
no
coming.
problem at
It's-
all.
As I've said, it's no joke. I didn't know we had a sailing co-op with Winthrop, so I learned
had no
something every time. Thank you. I
You're
know
very
you have a
welcome.
long day.
Anytime.
Appreciate it.
Great, thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
All right, so, moving right along. School committee protocols is something that we do on a yearly basis. I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but just for the community who's out there, just some of the highlights and some of the big bullet items. The school committee signs this once a year, and, you know, it goes into things of how we govern, and can I say, this will be on the website?
It
It
usually is, yes.
Okay, great. How we govern, how we treat each other. And one of the things I just want to read, one of the bullets under how we treat each other. We shall work to build trust between and among school committee members, the superintendent and the administration, by treating everyone with dignity and respect, even in times of disagreement. And one of the things that we do, and Amy and Pam, you mentioned it too, we don't blindside one another. I think we're really great about, we just don't do that. We really try to, if there's something that has not, been brought up, we'll talk about it at a later date. And I think that really builds confidence with everyone in this room that we can say our piece and be confident, agree or disagree, that we can do that. Excuse me. How he communicates, another part, how we will improve, limits of our authority, and there are many, by the way, and what to do when things go wrong. So again, for the community, this will be up on our website, and I'll pass this around for everybody to sign.
Sounds great. And I'll take it to the office, and Nancy Kelly will handle that.
Great, thank you. All right.
Has it changed, I'm sorry, has it changed since last time?
I believe there were just some minor changes, nothing to red line or anything like that. All right, lastly for me is the appointment of school committee and school committee, subcommittee appointments and liaisons.
I hate to do this, but should we table that until Karen's here?
I think so.
Yeah, okay, I
Hate to
have no
table.
problem with that, I'll go with what the group wants.
She's a
You
part
read
of
my mind.
Okay.
Oh, okay, good.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right, so do I need to have
I
a
just
vote?
don't want to foist anything on
No,
you.
I'll note that it was tabled when I
Okay.
review this tomorrow.
Great. Thank you, Amy, for bringing that up. Subcommittee, school building.
We're still sort of in the same place we were last meeting, that if you go by Stanley, it already looks like a derelict property. I mean, it's so amazing how quickly it turns from a school into like a lawn.
Right.
And so the windows are out, and I think in the next few weeks, we're working about removing all the services, you know, water, electrical, gas, things like that. And then it will come down probably by the end of this month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and then we're on schedule, and Martha just told me we're on schedule for the bids to go, the bids opening for general contractors and,
Great,
yeah. So-
awesome.
Any hiccups? Any complaints? No?
No, I mean, I think that, there was some noise at the beginning because they were installing fences in the property, so I had to drill around, and so people were just like, can you tell us when it's gonna happen? And I was like, well, it's not gonna happen anymore, it already happened. Like, it'll be quiet until the building goes down, and then the noisiest thing are gonna be the beeping for the backup of the trucks is what's
Right.
gonna drive you crazy, and then there's gonna be nothing for a while, and then we'll have a contractor, you're gonna get your blasting surveys if you live close by, and that's the next big thing to happen, so. We have some drone footage of the building right now.
That's great.
It's kind of cool, and then we'll have it as the building goes down, hopefully, but I think I was gonna try to like edit it down to be like, a 30-second video, so you can just fly around the school right now and put it on the website, but
That'd be great. Thank you, Suzanne.
that's about it.
John, you want to just chat a little bit about the final ESP contract?
Sure. So I guess just for some very quick background, I think we ran through the context last time, but just for very quick background, through an administrative error, we needed to go back and clarify what the length of the ESP day was going to be, particularly with the elementary school and the middle school. And we had a number of sessions with the ESPs, the district and the ESPs, and we did come to an agreement where the ESPs agreed that we would have, their workday would be school day, and I think that is an outcome that, again, I heard it mentioned earlier about kind of looking ahead a little bit. That aligns quite nicely with that goal. And as far as compensation for getting to this agreement, there was a one-time payment. It was actually two-tiered. One was for $500, and that went to the ESPs who were, maybe there was some impact, but they weren't going to be significantly impacted, and there was another payment for $750. That was designated for the elementary school employees, since they were going to be the most impacted. So $500 and $750, and again, we felt, in the district side and the school committee, that that was reasonable. That was something that it corrected, again, this administrative error that I think predated almost all of us, going back probably close to 5 years, and hadn't been picked up. But once it was, we wanted to, again, get to a reasonable outcome, and I think we got there. And and we had a session last week where the school committee voted on it, approved it, so it passed.
Great. Excellent. I'd like to just publicly thank Martha Seibert, Martha Raymond, and John, who helped and wrap that up. Everyone did a really great job, and we corrected the error that was in there. And so going forward, we'll be set to whatever the school day happens to be. All right.
There's an error in the
Yeah,
agenda.
that's fine.
Sorry.
That's okay. That is okay. We will forgive you.
Okay.
All right. The consent agenda. The consent agenda is designed to expedite the handling of routine and miscellaneous business of the district. The school committee may adopt the entire consent agenda with one motion. At the request of any committee member, any item or items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda for discussion. So for today, there's the regular session minutes of August 11th, executive session minutes of August 25th, and a 1, 2, 3 warrants. Any discussion? Hearing none, can someone make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Second. All approved?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone that's no opposed? That is great. Public comment. I'm not sure. I see one person out there. I don't know, Ms. Howitt, if you want to comment, or if that's someone we know internally here.
No, I don't,
No.
but
Ms. Howitt,
I would say she doesn't raise her.
going once, going twice. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us via email. And with that, can someone make a motion to adjourn?
I will make the motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All right, all approve? That's it. Thank you, everybody.
Nice first
Oh,
meeting,
good
Glenn.
job.
Thank you.
done.